Welcome back to the Minute Women podcast. I'm Grace.
And I'm Linnea.
And here on this podcast, each week we break down a different Canadian Heritage Minute.
So Grace gets to tell me all about it, and then I get to learn with you, the viewers, listeners.
Viewers, listeners, you know, they could be watching it.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be nerve-wracking. If I found out you were watching it, I'd be a little concerned, actually.
That'd be weird.
Where are they?
Where
They're in the
are
walls.
you?
But on this week's episode, we are introducing a new segment to the Minute Women podcast, which we are calling the Sorry segment because we're human.
And Canadians.
And we improv a lot of this.
Yes.
And so we make mistakes.
We do. So one really unique thing about this podcast that some of you might not really believe is true is that I, Linnea, honestly don't know what episode we're doing when I come into the studio.
And I am genuinely impressed with how much she knows based on just no information. She gets no prep.
I'm here to amaze Grace.
I am here with such a high advantage.
So sometimes that means that I haven't had time to really think about what Grace is talking about or make real life connections. So a little while ago, we did an episode on, and I might butcher this, Kenojuak Ashevek.
Perfect. Kenojuak Ashevek.
So we did an episode on her, and we talked about her, her giving her art, kind of selling her art and working with the Houstons.
Yeah, so James Archibald Houston, I should say, was her art dealer.
Right. And so what I failed to realize while we were talking about that.
And your mom made you realize.
And my mom kind of aggressively told me that I was dumb.
This segment is really for her.
This is for my mom. Shout out to Lori.
Shout out to Lori. Happy belated birthday.
Happy belated birthday. Is that there is an art gallery in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, where I grew up, called the Houston North Gallery.
Yeah.
And it was actually a gallery that I used to walk by all the time when I was little, and they had little stone carvings in the window, and I thought they were so cool. And that art gallery was actually owned by the Houston family. And so I know this art gallery, I remember this, but I wasn't able to make the connection while I was talking to Grace about this.
Yeah, did you ever meet them?
Yeah, so I met the son and his wife, and I don't know, my mom...
That's crazy.
My mom seems to think I met James and his wife, maybe, but I
don't remember.
I don't remember. I was little, but I definitely remember going there and talking to the people in the shop and thinking all this stuff was really cool. So,
is there any, of her work in that gallery? Or was it just co-op or
it was
whatever?
A lot of co-op stuff. I mean, there may have been.
Cool.
That gallery doesn't exist anymore. It closed a couple of years ago when the family moved, but they did live in Lunenburg for a while.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so
it's such a stereotype of Canada, and I think especially Atlantic Canada, that you just kind of know everybody.
Yeah.
And so I can tell you a story about a woman from Nunavut, and you're literally 2 degrees.
Right, 2 degrees of separation
from her.
So I did want to just add that into our sorry segment to say that sorry, Mom, for not remembering and not sounding as intelligent as I could have in the original podcast.
Yeah, every sorry segment has to be specifically addressed to someone.
This is about Grace being knowledgeable. So
no, not at all. I'm sure that I have made mistakes thus far because we're just human. And so, I mean, if you do have any corrections,
yes, please.
One, don't be a dick about it. But also, if you DM us and are like, hey, I think you got this wrong.
Yeah,
or
please
whatever,
let us know.
We will totally add that to our sorry segment we feel like it's relevant and necessary for people to know.
And not really mean.
Yeah,
we don't like mean people.
We're a happy little community here. Yeah. We don't need to rock the boat
too
much.
Nice little podcast.
Yeah, we're a nice little podcast.
All right. So Grace, today, what are we doing today?
New content. So unlike previous episodes of Minute Women, I think it would be interesting if I don't tell you what minute we're doing right off the bat. I'm just going to jump into the content and wait and see how long. But I think you'll figure it out.
You think I'll get it?
There'll be a name that you recognize and you're like, oh, this is the one we're doing today.
I hope so. Otherwise, I'm going to look really dumb.
So this could be a total failure. But you know what? Live and learn. We're learning just as much as the audience.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, I'm ready.
So Annie Jameson was born and raised in Ireland, and she was the daughter of Scottish immigrants, her grandfather having arrived with her brothers. In Ireland, they established a successful distillery and the Dublin Brewery.
Jameson whiskey?
We are talking about those Jamesons. They are involved in today's story.
Okay.
During Annie's childhood, the potato blight struck. We're back at the potatoes.
We know about the potatoes.
But the Jameson family, living in a comfortable mansion with a moat, was not immediately affected by the tragedy.
Wait, a moat like
a moat.
like a castle? Like
we dug a river around our house.
Shoot.
Just in case those poor Irish try and get our potatoes. This is the last stronghold of strong, good potatoes. And we will defend them with our life and our moat.
That's insane. Okay.
Annie was renowned for her beauty and excellent singing voice, which brought in opportunities from conservatories and theaters. Annie had secured an offer from the legendary 18th century theater, the Covent Garden, which I've never really heard of, but it's
Go Annie.
Yeah, it's in continental Europe. I believe it's in Italy, which had recently become an opera exclusive venue. So during this period, there's this massive revival in opera, and opera is like pop music again.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's fun.
Despite the growing popularity of operas, though, the theater wasn't deemed a respectable career for a woman of her status.
Oh.
So theater...
Like she's too good for theater? Or she's not,
Yeah.
okay.
So for a long time, theater is like people of a certain class associate it with like sex work.
Oh.
Yeah, because there
Okay.
probably are connections to sex work.
Yeah.
But the theater is not a place for a respectable young lady, especially when they want to like get married and like carry on the family name and blah, blah, blah. However, the family, like her parents knew it would crush her when they were like, no, you can't go be in the theater.
It was her dream.
It was her dream. She really wanted to do this, and they
Poor
didn't want
Annie.
they didn't want to disappoint her too much. So to soften the blow, they arranged for Annie to live with a respectable family of bakers, the De Renolis, in Bologna, Italy.
Bologna.
It's Bologna?
Or Bologna.
Bologna?
Bologna.
It's not bologna.
It's not. I know, like, it's bolognese sauce.
Oh, yeah.
When you have, like, the pasta sauce with the meat in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bologna?
We're going to go with Bologna.
Yeah.
Bologna? Bologna?
Bologna.
If we got it wrong, let us know.
Yeah, please.
And there she could continue her singing studies at the conservatory. Or conservatoire, as it were.
Conservatoire. Oh, fancy.
So Annie really liked living with this family, and she liked living in Italy.
Okay.
The family had a lot of relatives and friends that would visit as well. So it's this big house, and there's always people coming and going.
And they're Italian. They're eating pasta and drinking wine.
And if you're from Ireland and then you get to go to Italy, like I feel like that's a culture shock in a good way.
In a very good way.
You go from like, not that there's anything wrong with Ireland, but I feel like Italy is a lot more colorful and
Oh, well, I was just going to say, when I think of like, when I think of like history, if I think of like Ireland or like Scotland or England even, I think of it as all kind of gray. But if you think of like Italy, it's like red and orange and sunny
like
and happy. Yeah.
So she's in Italy. She's loving it. And she's introduced to this little boy, Luigi, who is the grandson of the family, the De Rinaldi family. Luigi. A baba de butch. That's my family's slang for Italian. If ever we need to say something in Italian, or like, oh, we're having Italian tonight, we're like, de baba de butchi. It doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
So Luigi's mother, the daughter of the Rinaldi's family,
I didn't know that was a real name. I really thought Luigi was just like
nope, that's
a
his
super silly like. That's wow.
It's a shame that Mario was around and really ruined that name for people.
Yeah.
But yeah, Luigi is a real name. And unfortunately, his mother passed away shortly after his birth.
Oh, so death number 1.
Yeah, so he's regularly visiting his grandparents, and he is brought to visit his grandparents by his widower father, Giuseppe Marconi.
Dun, dun,
Dun,
dun.
dun. Do you know what minute we're
I
doing
know
now?
where this is going.
So, yeah, Giuseppe Marconi brings the son to visit the grandparents. And despite the protections that the Jameson family had kind of built up to protect Annie from end up doing anything disrespectful to the family, she falls in love with Giuseppe.
Of course she does. With
Yes.
Wait, with Giuseppe?
Not Luigi. Luigi's a little boy.
Oh, okay.
So she loves the dad. who is significantly older than
I
her.
was just going to say, though.
She could be like, she's solidly between them as generations.
Wow.
I didn't figure out, I think they're at least like 15 years apart in age. But that's like a common thread. We've already seen like Sir John A. Macdonald marry someone real younger than him.
Jeepers.
Yeah, anyways. So she abandons her studies at the conservatory to return to Ireland.
Oh, Annie.
And she asks her parents for permission to marry.
Wow, brave girl.
And the Jamesons were highly disapproving of Giuseppe. He was too old, he was a foreigner, and he was like a sloppy second, which was evident by him having a young Italian son.
Yeah.
Annie's parents again vetoed their daughter's decision and began introducing her to like hordes of young, respectable men. So people that they had essentially filtered through, and they're like, yeah, this is the person you should marry. So they very quickly introduce her to society, which is
lots
like an
of cute
upper-class
Irishmen.
thing. Yeah, lots of cute Irishmen that they think will make Annie happy. And Annie was a good daughter. She entertained all of the company. She met all the people that her parents wanted her to meet, but in secret, she continued to write and receive letters from Giuseppe. And as soon as Annie came of age, she set up a rendezvous point. She went to Europe, and they married and returned across the Alps as Signora Marconi.
Whoa.
I stole that line from a book, but
I love that.
Annie Jameson returned across the Alps to Italy as Signora Marconi.
Oh, little Annie.
So, have you figured out what minute we are doing, Linnea?
I think I have. I think this is going to be, it's like Mr. Marconi and Newfoundland
Ding,
and
ding,
the
ding.
telegraph thing.
Yes. So, yeah, we're doing Guglielmo Marconi. So, these are his parents. This is the story of how his parents meet, which I just thought was a cool story. Also, it means he's the grandson of Jameson's and Jameson Distillery.
That's crazy.
Which, yeah, is like really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah, so in that Heritage Minute, it's essentially the invention of radio telegraphs.
Yeah.
And
that little
click, click, click.
Yeah, that noise.
Yeah, and so it's like a bunch of kids running around, essentially making fun of these guys trying to like build radio technology.
Yeah.
And then once they get it, they're like, come in, kids, listen to the click, click, click. And they're like, well, that's interesting. And they're like, it's coming from all the way over there.
Yeah. I actually went to Newfoundland this summer for the first time.
Oh, okay.
And was in St. John's and went to the lighthouse and like Signal Hill and like the Marconi exhibit and stuff. So
Cool.
it was really cool.
Yeah, I've never been to St. John's, Newfoundland. I've only been to the west coast of Newfoundland.
Oh, it's the prettier. It's really pretty.
When I got there, they were like, it's the best coast.
To all
And I
our
was like, okay.
to all our Newfoundland friends, both coasts are really nice, but like the more like I'd say like untouched nature side is the west coast for sure.
When
St.
you
John's
watch
is the city.
Newfoundland tourism commercials,
Yes.
and they're always hanging laundry on cliffs for some reason, it's the west coast.
That's the west coast.
Like we went to Grossmore National Park, and while we were there, they have a little museum that's essentially a museum to fishing families and how the fisheries grew. And the house that is protected is like a time capsule. It's really interesting. And my dad, essentially, my younger brother was like, hey, Dad, hold my coat, and throws it at him and runs away. And my dad's like, okay. And he went to the laundry line of the museum and just hung his coat and just walked away. And I was like, yes, we're fulfilling my laundry dreams for a Newfoundland vacation.
I love that.
There's a really good 22-minute segment that's just like, Newfoundland, cliffs, beaches, laundry. Like, that's one of my favorite skits.
It's so true. Yeah. So we're still in Italy.
Yeah, so we're still in Italy. And now Annie and Giuseppe are married. And they have 2 children together, one of which is Guglielmo Marconi,
Dun, dun, dun.
dun, 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 who was born on July 20th, 1874.
Okay.
So he's the second child of the marriage. And he had a very comfortable upbringing, splitting his time between like Florence and Tuscany. Like they're all over Europe. He also briefly lived in Bedford with his mother and older brother Alfonso, and so he learns to speak English fluently.
Bedford,
Ireland, I believe, or Bedford, England, one of the two.
Okay.
So as Marconi is growing up, he's very interested in science. He's very interested in electricity in particular, and during his early attempts to establish wireless telegraphy, which is the technology that's displayed in the Heritage Minute,
Right.
Marconi had constant support and help from his mother, but endless obstruction from his father.
Aw.
So his father is
Daddy
just not...
issues.
Yeah, dad does not approve of whatever he's getting up to, and his mom is like, I'll do whatever you need to, like, help you do this.
So Graham Bell has invented the telephone.
Graham Bell has invented the telephone.
So we have that kind of communication. So we're working on the, like, wireless aspect.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's already communication, but he's working on, like, overseas communication.
Yeah, like, he's particularly interested in how you can convert either telephone, but more feasibly telegraphs into a wireless communication system. So there's no radio yet, but there's telephone. But you need to have, like, a direct line, essentially, to that other person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Marconi never received a formal or public education, I should say. Instead, he learned chemistry, math, and physics at home through a series of private tutors that were hired for him by his parents, which I think is probably just the norm for wealthier families.
So where is their income coming from? Like, the parents? Like, is mom cut off totally from the Jamesons?
I didn't get that
vibe?
sense.
Yeah.
But the dad is definitely, like, a property owner, so he's kind of just like a landed gentry type.
Yeah, he's got some money.
Yeah, so he's got money. Marconi noted an important mentor was his professor Vincenzo Rosa, a high school physics teacher. Rosa taught the 17-year-old Marconi the basics of physics as well as new theories on electricity. At the age of 18, he went back to Italy, or Bologna. I've been avoiding saying that word so much.
What word?
Bologna.
Oh, Bologna.
The town. I don't want, because if I got it wrong, I don't want to say it all the time. Oh, well.
That's okay.
And Marconi became acquainted with the university's physicist Augusto Righi. There's a lot of Italian names.
That's okay.
Who had done research with Heinrich Hertz. So, the guy with electricity.
Hertz is that's the scale, right?
Yeah.
That electricity is measured on.
Yeah, exactly. So
I know things.
Exactly. You know what we know what we're doing. Spoiler alert: Linnea knows everything going into this. She's just playing really dumb. No. Keep expectations low. We keep expectations low on this podcast.
So low.
So Marconi attended the lectures at the university and was allowed to use the laboratory in the library while he went there.
His dreams are coming true.
Yeah, so he's like, I get to play with electricity, and that's all I want. I genuinely didn't see, like, he was also interested in sports. Like, it's just electricity. So from a young age, Marconi is interested in science, particularly electricity. In the early 1890s, during his late teens and early 20s, Marconi began to work on the idea of wireless telegraphy, which is the idea that telegraph messages could be sent and transmitted without connected wires, which is the big limiting factor.
But that is so wild. Like, to be living in a time where that doesn't exist, that type of technology is, to even think about technology now, like, when you really think about it, like, it's kind of crazy. So to think about it when there's nothing there, it's a totally blank canvas, and he's just like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I could do this thing? Now I'm going to try working towards doing this thing. Like, I just think that's such a...
Yeah, and it's really only in the last 2 centuries at this point that there's even a real concrete notion that there are things that you cannot see.
Right.
Like, there is some notion of that, but it's very religious, I think.
Yeah.
But now they're like, oh, no, that's not a one-off, or that's not something unexplainable. There's so much happening around us that your senses can't pick up on.
And
which is crazy.
And the need and desire to communicate over varying places over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, that sense that a world that once seemed so big is increasingly becoming smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And you can feel, like, the size of the world evaporating around them. Yeah. And they're just like, oh, wow, I could talk to someone thousands of miles away.
Just crazy.
Yeah. So the idea of an electric telegraph didn't necessarily originate with Marconi. So other people had theorized that you could do this. Right. Many inventors have been exploring the idea of wireless telegraph, going so far as to even build multiple forms of electricity over 50 years, or multiple systems to actually do it. In 1888, Heinrich Hertz demonstrated that one could produce and detect electromagnetic radiation, and that's what we now call a Hertzian wave. Right. Today, we just call them radio waves, though. Yeah. So Hertz discovers radio waves, which is fundamental to radio technology. Exactly. Radio waves sparked great interest among the scientific community, but it was largely just viewed as like a scientific discovery, not as something that had potential to be a form of communication.
Right, not something tangible, just a
yeah,
thing
they're
that
like,
exists.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I guess that's part of how the world works, but no one was looking at it as like a practical thing that you could make use of.
Right.
So Hertz's death in 1894 brought published reviews of his earlier discoveries, including a demonstration on the transmission and detection of radio waves by British physician, or I keep saying physician, but it's physicist. Oh. British physicist Oliver Lodge, and an article about Hertz's work by Augusto Righi. So that's the professor that Marconi is familiar with. It's through those articles that Marconi's interest developed even further in developing some kind of wireless telegraphy system. Right. And that's how he's introduced to like Hertz's theories. By the age of 20, Marconi started conducting experiments into radio communication in his attic. He expanded upon Hertz's earlier experiments and began using a coher, which is a primitive form of radio signal detector used in the earliest radio receivers based on the advice of Righi and the experiments of other scientists.
And so this is...
So he's kind of standing on the shoulders of giants a little bit. But yeah.
But is this more like CB radios, like more like walkie-talkie radios, or is this like radio listening to music radio? Like, is this communication back and forth radio, like a telephone, or is this...
So this is
just broadcasting.
Broadcast. Okay. Yes. You know way more lingo about radios than I do, but yeah, right now it's one-way communication. It's just a sender and a receiver.
Right. Okay.
Throughout, like we'll talk about it, but throughout his career, he experiments with both, but initially it's just broadcast radios.
Okay, cool.
During the summer of 1894, he built a storm alarm made of a battery, a coher, and an electric bell, which went off when it picked up radio waves generated by lightning.
That's cool.
Which is super cool. He's just like, my bell's going off.
How many times do you think he electrocuted himself?
Good question. I don't know.
He's just in his attic. It's like...
Do you think he liked it?
Not again. I don't know. Maybe.
Late one night in December of 1894, Marconi successfully demonstrated a radio transmitter and receiver to his mother and the setup was made of a bell ring. Essentially, it was set up so that a bell would ring on the other side of the room when he told it to. Which,
that's like, so cool.
You would seem like a magician. Yeah. You're like, I'm going to hit this button. There's nothing connecting the two. And when I hit it, that bell's going to ring.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And once he was able to demonstrate, like, look, I can do it, he had the support of his father. So his father's like coming around. Yeah.
His father must be old now, man. Like,
yeah, I don't know exactly how old he is. His parents aren't like a huge part of his life down the line. Right. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. No. But he now has the support of his father. Now that he's like, look, I made a bell ring. And he's like, oh, I believe in you, son.
Yay.
And with the support of his father, Marconi now more seriously pursued his experiments, and he eventually developed a functional system with many components. So he manages to turn this like little experiment into this like big scientific thing.
That's so cool.
I think it's pretty evident at this point that I don't know that much about radio technology, so I'm just gonna roll with the punches. By the summer of 1895, his signals could be sent and picked up by 1/2 mile, the maximum distance hypothesized by some physicists. So there was this theory that essentially 1/2 mile would be the maximum, but for a lot of people, they thought you could only go as far as you could see.
Weird.
Yeah, so like they thought radio waves were essentially the same as like
if something didn't block it or obstruct it, it could continue going?
Yeah, like they knew that, I think by that point, that the way you saw was light waves hitting your eye.
Right.
And so your eye is the best measure for how waves work. But obviously there are light waves happening and traveling.
Yeah.
It's just your eye can't pick up on them.
Weird.
Yeah. So
science is weird.
What a bunch of idiots.
Science is a bunch of dudes just being like, well, it was a bunch of dudes. Now, thankfully, we have something else in science. Just being like, huh. This is what I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's all science is. Just like...
And then you electrocute yourself.
So at this point, his device only works up to 1/2 mile, which is the hypothesized maximum distance. But Marconi discovered that you could increase the range of the device if you heighten the antenna. Okay. So if you put the antenna higher, then the signal's going to go farther. because I guess it just radiates outwards.
Cool.
I don't really know exactly how that works, but the increased height of the antenna increased the range of his device by 2 miles. And now the signal could be sent over hills, which is great. That was the other problem, is that if you have any physical structures in the way, you're going to block the signal. The higher it goes, the less you have to be concerned about those
Europe,
things.
there's some hills there.
Ever heard of the Alps? By this point, Marconi began contacting Italian officials to get support for his work. So he wants government funding, essentially.
Good
but
for
he
him.
felt like the Italians just didn't respect him enough. Like, these guys, they don't want to give me enough money. So instead, he started pursuing funding in England. And he thought that would be more
The
productive.
Italians were just busy making pasta, you know? It's a time-consuming job.
Pasta, pizza, leaning towers.
Yeah, they had a lot on their hands, okay?
Yeah.
They
And
were busy.
sinking towns.
Sinking town.
Yeah, my dad won't go to Venice because it's like sinking.
Yeah,
He's just like, I don't want to be there. And just it happens to be the day that everything goes under.
true.
In 1896, he arrived in Dover, England. The customs officer immediately opens his case and finds like all of this shit in there. He's like, oh my God, it's a bomb. No, but he was just like, this is a lot of stuff. I should call someone. And so the customs officer contacts the Admiralty in London. But it all works out for the best because that means he immediately gets to go meet like
that's
government
cool.
officials. And he meets with a guy named William Preece, who is the chief electrical engineer of the British Post Office.
Crap.
Yeah. And so like,
Go Marconi, go. Just networking in the airport.
absolutely. I bet he planned everything. I
He
don't
was
know
like,
if that's
I'll
true.
make it look like a bomb.
And they won't kill me on sight. 'Cause I'm a white guy.
And this is...
During this time, Marconi decided that he should patent his system, which he applied for on the 2nd of June, 1896, and it got the British patent number 12039 and is entitled Improvements in Transmitting Electric Impulses and Signals and in Apparatus Thereof. Catchy title.
Wow. Go Marconi, go.
That's what we wanted to call this podcast, actually.
We wanted to call it what again?
We wanted to call it, obviously, Improvements in Transmitting Electrical Impulses and Signals and in Apparatus Therefore.
Duh.
And that's why we had to change it, because we kept saying thereof.
And Mark was like, let's just do Minute Women. And we were like, if you insist.
I think it's a little more accurate to what you guys talked about. Ugh. Yeah. Spotify doesn't allow you to have titles that long either. So this patent is the first patent for a radio wave-based communication system.
Exciting stuff.
So now Marconi's in England, and over the course of the next year, so 96 to 97, Marconi continued to demonstrate and improve his system in Britain, which essentially, I mean, the improvements are largely like, look how I can increase the signal, which is kind of a fun way to improve something, is when it's so measurable of like, it goes farther now.
Yeah.
It's like a very tangible goal
is.
that I can follow as a reader. In March 1897, he managed to send Morse code signals 6 kilometers. So we're going from 2 miles to 6 kilometers. I didn't keep this consistent in units, I'm just realizing now.
That's totally okay.
But
6 kilometers is still more than 2 miles.
Yeah, for sure. So 2 miles is like 3 point something kilometers, right? Maybe?
This is not a math
This is not a math podcast. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Transmitting equipment.
Said it once, I'll say it again. I don't do math.
This podcast is not about math. Transmitting equipment was then relocated to Brendown Fort on the Somerset coast. This increased the range of Marconi's device to 16 kilometers. That's a huge jump.
That's a big jump.
Yeah. Priest was impressed by all of these accomplishments and had Marconi present 2 very important lectures. So now he gets to go up on stage and be like, look what I've done.
I am a genius
did it.
man.
Yeah, you want me to make that bell ring? I can totally do it.
Watch me.
Yeah, I wish Marconi, like, obviously radio technology is really important, but he totally could have gone the magician route.
Right?
And he has a great name for a magician.
The masterful
Welcome,
Marconi.
The magnificent Marconi.
The magnificent. With a cape and a little mustache.
Not that Marconi messed up, but man, you messed up.
You missed an opportunity.
And this is like the golden age of magic. This is like
Grace knows nothing.
Harry Houdini times.
Grace knows nothing about radios, but she knows a lot about magic.
Hell yeah. I have a lot of like vests and stuff. That's what I envision magicians wear. Like they wear like vests. I don't know.
With lots of pockets.
A lot of
tricks.
Ooh, yeah.
And little bunnies.
Yeah, I have a lot of doves at my house. A lot of bunnies. So Marconi did not go into magic, but he did conduct further experiments, this time for the Italian government and the French government. But he continues to work out of England.
Very cool.
In December 1898, the British Lightship Service authorized the establishment of wireless communications between South Foreland Lighthouse at Dover and East Goodwin Lightship, 12 miles apart. Again, we're switching back to miles, but yeah, so now I feel like people aren't just taking notice of like, oh, this is cool. It's like, oh, we could save lives with this.
Yeah.
Like we could have there's like a really important reason to have this technology.
Is a big deal.
Yeah. Especially when obviously there's no way to have wired communication with a ship. Yeah. We don't have to send smoke signals anymore. We can send
Thank God
radio waves. On the 17th of March, 1899, the East Goodwin Lightship sent the first SOS message, a signal on behalf of the merchant vessel called the Elbe, which had run aground on the Goodwin Sands. So it's the first time SOS is ever sent.
Fun facts from Linnea time.
This is my favorite segment of the Minute Women podcast.
Okay, so there is this myth, this theory, this pop culture phenomenon, if you will, that SOS stands for Save Our Souls.
Oh, yeah, I did think that.
So this is actually not true. So SOS is literally the two easiest letters in the Morse code alphabet to type. And if you type it over and over and over again, it still stays in the same pattern. So you could start with O. You could do O, S, O, S, O, S, O, S. It's still going to lead.
Because S is 3 clicks, right?
So it's, I actually don't know, but I think it's da-da, and then a long one. Like da-da-did, da-da-did.
Da-da-da-da.
Kind of. Yeah.
Cool.
And I might be wrong on that part, what it actually is.
But that makes so much more sense.
But it's, so it's not,
like, why would we get creative with it?
And
just, like,
because
make it easy.
the letters SOS, if you were to write them in the sand, they're the same upside down as they are right side up.
Oh.
So
yeah,
it doesn't matter what way the message is. It's very easy to recognize.
Cool.
So yeah, fun fact, SOS does not mean Save Our Souls. It's just, and I mean, like, that makes sense that people would think that. Like, that's a good word to put with it.
And I guess it, like, if it helps you remember it.
But originally, SOS was just put out as an emergency signal because it's very easy to communicate.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's also a Jonas Brothers song.
It is a Jonas Brothers song. And moving on. Jonas Brothers, come on our podcast sometime.
I mean, yeah. So the first SOS message was then received by the radio operator at the South Foreland Lighthouse, who summoned the aid of the Ramsgate lifeboat. In 1899, Marconi was invited to America to share his work. He's crossing the ocean.
America!
Yep. Upon his return to England aboard the SS St. Paul, Marconi installed wireless equipment with the help of his assistant. And this enabled the St. Paul to be the first ocean liner to announce its return via wireless when Marconi's Royal Needles Hotel radio station contacted her at 66 nautical miles off the English coast.
That's very cool.
So we're increasing distances. Yeah. Now it can be established on like boats and stuff. It doesn't have to be a stationary thing.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So we're making improvements. But Marconi was extremely ambitious and saw potential to go even further. He's going to push this radio wave. He's a dreamer.
And a doer.
Yeah, he did stuff.
He's done stuff.
He's done stuff. Not magic, but that's okay.
Grace is so disappointed.
Like, it only just occurred to me now that he really could have taken his life in a different direction. It's kind of like the plot of The Prestige, where you invent a cloning machine, but you use it for magic.
Yeah.
I've actually never seen The Prestige.
If you haven't seen The Prestige, now you know.
Marconi began to investigate the feasibility of sending signals across the Atlantic Ocean in order to compete with the transatlantic telegraph cables. So currently, at that time, I mean, if you wanted to send a telegraph, they actually had cables that were like sunk underneath the ocean, but way slower. And obviously, if anything were to happen to the cables, it's like a lot of labor to get it fixed.
Yeah, it's super hard to replace.
Yeah. So in October 1900, turn of the century, Marconi and his team of workers sailed for
He's got a team now.
Oh,
We're
he's got a
past an
team.
assistant. We have a team.
We have a team of
I love
workers
that
and
for
scientists,
him.
and they are sailing to Massachusetts. And this location was intended initially for the reception of the transatlantic signal. So Newfoundland is not his first choice. We are in Wellfleet, Massachusetts initially.
Wow.
And there the team built two exact replica stations, one in Poultoo, England, again, probably saying that wrong, and the other one is 4,920 kilometers away in Massachusetts. So by 1901, the Poultoo station is ready to start sending signals, and those signals are being received about 362 kilometers away. But we haven't been able to reach all the way across the Atlantic. We still got a long ways to go.
Okay.
But Marconi theorizes that as long as he keeps adding power, eventually he'll be able to receive the signal. So the problem is we just haven't been able to generate enough power to send it.
Which kind of makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, and I think he's right in that sense.
Yeah.
But disaster strikes on September 17th.
Dun, dun, dun.
Due to a strong gust of wind, which blew the antenna down in Poultoo, which then reduced it to just mangled wire. So the England station has been destroyed because of high winds.
Oh, no.
But Marconi is determined to not abandon the project entirely, so he replaces the Poultoo station with a more modest system that would allow just for one-way transmission. So initially, he's hoping that they could do two-way, but he's like, you know what? I just need to get this message sent across the Atlantic. So we're going to do something more simple, and it's just going to be one-way transmissions. And then the receiver was moved to Signal Hill, Newfoundland, with the assistance.
Canada!
Yep, we're now at our
We're here.
destination.
We made it.
But Newfoundland is still part of Britain at this time.
Oh.
Yeah, this is before Newfoundland doesn't join until 1945,
Right.
I think, maybe.
Something like that.
So we're not. It's Canada in retrospect.
Yeah.
So it's fine. It's fine.
In hindsight.
And he does
Canada.
this because the British Prime Minister is giving him full assistance, and it would turn out to be wise because the station in Massachusetts also falls down due to high winds.
Oh.
So that one gets destroyed, but they had already moved, so it was fine.
Right.
So Marconi reaches Newfoundland on the 6th of December, 1901, and there he installs the receiver on the floor of the Diphtheria and Fever Hospital in St. John's, Newfoundland. Mm-hmm. So they show them receiving it in, like, that tower that's on Signal Hill.
Yeah.
But it seems like he actually received it in a different building. Maybe that building just isn't there anymore, so you can't really show it. And then that building's more iconic, I guess.
I don't know. That's where in that building that you see in the Heritage Moment, that's where the museum is and everything.
Yeah.
Like, that's where all the info is.
Yeah, and that building was significant for a reason. But it seems like the receiver was in a different building.
Okay.
But I don't think that's a big deal. Anyways,
moving along.
Marconi expected this signal to be really weak, so he doesn't want to rely on a Morse code anchor and tape. So that's the thing that you always see where it's like that long. Yeah. So he needs the signal needs to be stronger for that device to pick up the message. And so rather than hook that up, Marconi opts to hook up a more reliable telephone receiver. So that's what you see in the minute when he's like holding it up to his ear.
Yeah.
His wire antenna was attached to a pole at ground level, and then depending on the weather, it would either be elevated using a hydrogen balloon or a kite. And because it's Newfoundland, the weather's crap, so they use a kite. From the pole, a second wire fed from the main antenna through a window into the hospital, where it connected with the receiver and the earpiece. So he did receive it in the hospital.
It must have just used to have been the hospital.
Yeah, maybe that used to be the hospital. Yeah. I'm not sure. The antenna was grounded by metal plates buried in the earth and then covered with zinc sheets. The significance of that, I do not know.
And
please,
we will never know.
Let us know.
Yeah, if you know why
Teach
zinc
us.
sheets are so important.
Leave a comment. Yeah. Marconi ironically had to tell Poultoo to send the signal message using an Atlantic cable because he can't send messages, so he has to use the thing that he's competing against to get the message to England. And then they're like, okay, we're good to go. But then, on December 12th, around 12:30 p.m., after several failed attempts, Marconi heard a faint click, click, click in the receiver. His assistant, Kemp, also got to listen before the message faded away, and messages were also received at approximately 1:10 and 2:20 that same day. 2 days later,
did it.
He did it. 2 days later, Marconi announced to the press that the first wireless telegraph had been sent and received across the Atlantic Ocean.
He's a winner.
So this is something I didn't realize.
Okay.
There's a lot of debate as to whether or not he actually did it.
Oh.
There's a lot of controversy around the fact that maybe this was not a successful transmission.
Really?
Yeah. So
Tell me more, Grace.
So the science is sound. The device he built is functioning. But for one, there's no physical record that it happened. So because he doesn't rely on an anchor and a tape, there's no physical evidence other than Marconi's own account, his assistant's account, and then the notes that he makes in his notebook. Right. And obviously they have a lot to benefit from saying that the technology worked.
Right.
Furthermore, the reception of the prearranged message was an S. So they had established in advance that he's going to send the letter S.
Because it's an easy letter to send.
But that also means that it's not like he had to decipher a message. It's not like England came up with a message, sent it, and then he's like, oh, you did. You nailed it. They already knew what was going to be sent. So that's another thing that people are like, yeah. The attempt also took place during the day, and due to the radiation of ultraviolet sunlight, the ionosphere is weak and thus more likely to absorb the low-frequency radio waves that reflect them. So you can send messages longer distances at night.
Okay.
And they sent it in the middle of the day. And so the circumstances around the message being sent, it's like, okay, so you knew what you were going to be sending and receiving. You don't have any physical evidence. And not to mention you sent it during the worst time of day when it would have been the hardest to receive the message. Like, it just seems like there's a lot against you. And Marconi felt challenged by skeptics immediately.
Of course.
So he was prepared to demonstrate it again. This time he's going to have like a documented test of it. So in February of 1902 on the SS Philadelphia, great ship, I guess.
Philly's a great place.
So he's on this ship, and the ship is sailing towards Great Britain. And so they decide to run the test again. So this time he's on a ship, I guess. I don't know why it's significant that they're on the ship specifically. But the result of the test with the tape reception was just at 2,490 kilometers away. And the audio reception was 3,400 kilometers. So the ticker picked up at 2,490, and then just using the telephone, it picked up at 3,400.
Okay.
These maximum distances were both achieved at night, and these tests were the first to show radio signals for medium wave and long wave transmissions travel farther at night than during the day.
So now he has done it.
So he's done it, but during the daytime, the signals could only be received about 1,100 kilometers away, which is less than half the distance claimed earlier at Newfoundland. So it's just like, so when you do replicate the experiment during the day, you're like thousands of kilometers short of what you're saying. At night, it is feasible, but during the day, not really.
So maybe.
So we've got a lot of questions about it.
Right.
But he has demonstrated that it is possible. It's just like, was it that experiment? We don't know.
He's just trying to make his dad happy.
And make money.
Make money.
So
aren't we all?
Because of all of this, Marconi had not fully confirmed the Newfoundland claims, although he did prove that radio signals could be sent for hundreds of kilometers, despite some scientists' earlier beliefs that you could limit it just to line of sight range. So we've still come very, very far from what was previously stated. He was still recognized for his accomplishments in the science community, and he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1909. He was the co-winner, but I don't remember who the other guy was.
Not a Canadian.
Not a Canadian.
Not in a Canadian Heritage Minute.
Marconi's not a Canadian.
But he's in a minute.
He's in a minute. While Marconi did not stay long in Newfoundland, he did return to the island in 1904 to install a wireless station at Cape Race. And that station would be the one to receive the SOS message from the Titanic in 1912.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Everything's coming together.
It's all come full circle.
But he's not done with Canada yet. So
Okay.
in addition to all of Marconi's scientific innovations, he's a shrewd businessman. And Marconi was committed to establishing a large permanent station that would be able to transmit messages across the Atlantic on a consistent commercial basis.
Okay.
So that's the ultimate goal.
Okay.
Which meant that the station in North America needed to be relocated to a larger city center.
Okay.
He likely would have set up at Cape Cod had it not been for the intervention of William Smith, Secretary of the Canadian Post Office. Smith negotiated with Canadian officials to entice Marconi to set up his operations in Canada, and Marconi was promised free use of the Canadian Railway between North Sydney and Montreal, and even Alexander Graham Bell offered Marconi the use of his private estate near Bedeque, Nova Scotia, while he settled.
Been there.
I've been there too. I did
very
archival work
nice.
there.
So we've both been to Bedeque. We've both seen the Alexander Graham Bell Museum and property.
Yeah, and the Ben Brea is the name of the...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's Gaelic for, I think, beautiful mountain or beautiful hills. One of the two.
That's Cape Breton for you.
That's right, Cape Breton for you.
Some
That's where I'm
beautiful
from.
hills.
Love that little island.
Shout out to CB.
Shout out to CP. So after several meetings and visits, Marconi decides that he's going to found the Marconi Wireless Telegraph Company of Canada Limited, which is a subsidiary of the parent English company. And in 1902, he built a radio station at Table Head in Glace Bay, Nova Scotia, which is very close to where I am from.
Very close.
Very close. Not from Glace Bay. Wouldn't want that out there. No, joking. It's so the reason that Glace Bay is chosen is outside of Newfoundland, it's the farthest east, and Newfoundland is currently not part of Canada. So
right.
At this point, it's the farthest east point in Canada. In December of that year, he transmitted Morse code messages from this station to his station in Cornwall. Communications between Glace Bay and Cornwall did prove to be unreliable and only possible after dark. So between 1905 and 1907, Marconi and his company built large new stations on both sides of the Atlantic. So still dealing with that issue of we can't send messages during the day. It's still pretty unreliable as well. So we were building new stations trying to make them more powerful. The latter station became known locally as Marconi Towers. So these two stations at the time were the two most powerful radio stations in the world. The technology was much like that used in the original experiments, but essentially just scaled up to gigantic proportions. So as long as you make it bigger, it will be better. Transatlantic communication was successful now during both day and night, and regular commercial service between Marconi Towers and Clifton opened officially on October 17th, 1907. So now it's consistent enough that you can start making money off of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like someday our podcast will be. Hopefully.
That's the dream. Just a modest income is all I ask. Initially, the stations at Marconi Towers and Clifton were limited to one way at a time transmissions, either east to west or west to east. Telegraphers called this a simplex system. However, as the technology got more popular with the commercial audience, then business justified that the system could be upgraded to a simultaneous two-way or a duplex system by the addition of dedicated receiving stations at Letterfrack, Ireland, and Louisbourg, Nova Scotia. So, now you can send them both ways at the same time. Wow, how exciting.
Wow. Technology.
So, duplex services began in 1913. In succeeding years, it was followed by competing services operated by other companies and countries spanning the oceans of the world and leading to the first worldwide wireless network. The station at Clifton was destroyed by Irish rebels in 1922.
Oh, those Irish rebels.
And its service was taken over by a newer long-wave station at Carnarvon in Wales.
Probably not carnivore.
Carnarvon. But I also, because I had to write it in English because Welsh spelling is crazy.
Welsh is crazy. The language, the spelling.
Yeah, no, like it's the Welsh spelling has like an F in there, but it's not pronounced as an F. Anyways.
And from the TV show The Crown, I've learned.
Oh, yeah.
That because in the third season,
He's got to go to Wales.
Charles has to go to Wales so he can be like the Prince of Wales, and he has to give a whole speech in Welsh, and he's never spoken Welsh before. And it's very much, at least in that time, I don't know what it's like now, but they very much portray it in the show, is that the people in Wales who speak Welsh, it's like very like culty. They're like, you're a newcomer. Our language is hard on purpose. Like, we don't want you to learn.
Oh.
And so he was faced with a lot of backlash over that.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because it's a very difficult language to speak and learn.
I mean, I don't want to disrespect our Welsh audience. Clearly, they're very culty.
Yeah. I said then, maybe not now.
Maybe now. Who knows? So in the 1920s, the advantages of shortwave lengths for long-distance radio communication were discovered and investigated systematically by Marconi. And in 1926, the long-wave transatlantic service with its Cape Breton stations were shut down and replaced by shortwave services out of London and Montreal. So shortwave radio goes further. So you can now have them in real city centers.
That shortwave and longwave are the opposites.
We're just going to roll with it. I think Marconi knows more about it than I do.
Science, technology, not our strong suit.
So the services and the receiving towers are dismantled, and everything is moved to Montreal and London. So Marconi while he's building these systems, he lives in Cape Breton kind of like half time. So he is living in Canada partially, and he doesn't live there long, though, once the company is established. And a big reason he doesn't settle there is because he marries a young woman by the name of Beatrice O'Brien. She's an Irish socialite. She's 11 years his junior. A beautiful trend on this podcast.
Following after his daddy.
He likes the Irish.
He likes those young Irish ladies.
Yeah, and she is not fond of living in Cape Breton. So what a bitch.
I hate her.
Though we're not going to put too much of this on her because it seems like Marconi used to be, before he was married, a big part of social life in Cape Breton. Like, he would go out to parties and he's playing piano. He's playing them like operatic piano pieces stuff. But as soon as he's married, he basically seeks to enclose her from everybody. Like, he doesn't want her to mingle in society.
That's nice.
She's not allowed to walk around the town by herself.
That sounds like a good life.
Yep. He restricts her contacts essentially to just, they live with another another couple, and so her contact is essentially limited to the wife of this other family, and she's not allowed to see men, especially.
Jeepers.
Yeah. So together.
Okay, Marconi.
Yeah.
So lost a lot of respect for our star here.
And it gets worse.
Of course it does.
It gets so much worse. So, yeah, he's not a great husband. The marriage really wasn't a happy one. And eventually they get divorced. So the marriage is annulled, because he's Catholic, so you can't get a divorce. Right. But the marriage is formally annulled in 1927, so he could remarry. In 1914, Marconi was made a senator in the Senate of the Kingdom of Italy, and he was appointed an honorary Knight of the Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order in the United Kingdom.
Wow.
During the First World War, Italy joined the Allied side of the conflict, and Marconi was placed in charge of the Italian military's radio service. He attained the rank of lieutenant in the Royal Italian Army and of commander in the Regia Marina.
Now, are they lieutenants or lieutenants?
What's the difference?
So Britain is a lieutenant? Like, we have a lieutenant governor. We don't have a lieutenant governor.
Gotcha.
So, like, lieutenant is, like, American, and I don't know.
Well, it's spelled with a T, so. I don't know. I don't know how they pronounce it. Sorry.
Okay. I had a thing with I, like, met and...
Okay, this is thing with the lieutenant.
No, at a event I was at last year, the lieutenant governor was there, and I had to introduce the lieutenant governor, and so it's like there's pages and pages
about it.
You have to like read a book and meet a man beforehand who like talks to you about how you address these people. So yes, a little bit of PTSD. Just get it right, Grace.
Sorry. So Marconi remarries. He remarried a woman by the name of Maria Cristina Bezzi Scali. Which probably is not how you pronounce it. But she was 26 years younger than him.
Wowza.
Wowza. They had one daughter. For unexplained reasons, Marconi left his entire fortune to his second wife and their only child. So he totally cuts his first wife and their children out of the will. To marry Maria, Marconi needed to be... So he did get the marriage annulled initially, and it wasn't a Catholic marriage.
Oh.
So now he has to be confirmed in the Catholic faith to marry Maria.
Oh.
And when he becomes confirmed, he is like a devout member of the church. And he personally introduced Pope Pius XI to radio technology in 1931. And that's when the Pope has his first broadcast.
Wow.
So this is the part where it gets worse. This is the fun last chapter of his life.
Okay.
Marconi was a huge fascist.
Oh, I love that. Love that for Marconi.
So Marconi joined the Italian Fascist Party in 1933. In 1930, Italian dictator Benito Mussolini appointed him president of the Royal Academy of Italy.
No, thank you. These are bad people.
No.
This is bad.
Which made Marconi...
Mark just turned down my mic because I got too loud because I'm so angry.
And this made Marconi a member of the Fascist Grand Council.
Shut up.
So Marconi was a huge apologist for the Italian fascist ideology and actions, such as an attack by Italian forces in Ethiopia. In his lecture, he stated, "I reclaim the honor of being the first fascist in the field of radiotelegraphy, the first to acknowledge the utility of joining the electric rays in a bundle, as Mussolini was the first in the political field to acknowledge the necessity of merging all the healthy energies of the country into a bundle for the greater greatness of Italy."
You know, if I was his first wife, I wouldn't have wanted my kids to have his fascist money anyway.
It's like, hey, are you a fascist? I don't want to be around anymore.
Yeah.
Also, you kept me trapped in a house in Glace Bay, Nova Scotia. Like, I've made some choices. I think I'm just going to go. You can have the money. I don't care.
Oh, God. That is...
Yeah. So
That's such a strong start. I really like his mom.
Yeah. Let's go back to the Jamesons.
Annie is a cool lady.
She just wanted to be a singer.
She just wanted to be a singer.
And now her son's a fascist. So while Marconi is developing his technologies, he suffered 9 heart attacks in the span of 3 years.
That's what you get for being a fascist.
I thought you were going to say for electrocuting yourself. But yeah,
No, that too.
You deserved it.
Being a fascist who electrocuted himself in his early age. Yeah, heart attack.
So like a cat, nine lives. On the 9th heart attack, Marconi died in Rome on the 20th of July, 1937. Good riddance.
And I bet he had a big fascist funeral.
There was a big Italian state funeral. Yep.
Of course.
As tribute, shops on the streets closed for a national mourning. And in Britain, at 6 p.m. the next day, the time designated for the funeral, all BBC transmitters and wireless post office transmitters in the British Isles observed 2 minutes of silence to honor him.
That's nice.
He didn't deserve it. In the British Post Office also sent a message requesting that all broadcasting ships honor Marconi with 2 minutes of broadcasting silence as well. And such is the life of Guglielmo Marconi.
That one was a bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah, that one was like kind of a plateau in terms like of emotions, and then just like off a cliff right at the end, plummeting into the ocean.
Well,
yeah. So Marconi was a fascist.
He was a fascist who might have been a liar.
Anyways, such is the emotional burden we as Minute Women carry.
Yes.
Ruining your favorite heritage minutes.
One by one.
One by one.
Yeah. Well, that's the end of this episode, guys. So thank you so much for tuning in again to Minute Women Podcast.
Yeah, and make sure you subscribe, rate, review this podcast wherever you're listening to it. And you can follow us on Instagram at Minute Women Podcast, and the same handle for our Facebook page. And now you can follow us on Twitter as well at The Minute Women. And you can keep up to date with all the fun things we're doing in between episodes, and you can see when we're posting our next episode.
Exactly. And remember, every Wednesday is Minute Women Wednesday, so that's when you can check out our new material.
Super fun.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.